You're a very obedient crowd, I must say. So I'm Glenn Cohen. I'm on the faculty here, and I'm also the director of the Petrie-Flom Center. And I wanted to welcome you to the event and to our beautiful new law school building. This is really an exciting event. People often start these conferences by saying, this is an area that has received much less attention than it's due. This is groundbreaking. This is a time when the moment has come. And normally that's probably less true than it is in this particular instance, where I think those things are really actually true. This is a moment where we really have a deep reckoning, both at a public level and an intellectual level, with the issues of institutional corruption and the issues of financial conflicts of interest. So we were delighted to be able to host this today with our partners at the Safra Center. And all I want to do is just thank three people who have been instrumental in this. The first is Dr. David Korn, who's really the intellectual engine behind this enterprise. The second is Holly Lynch, the executive director of the Petrie-Flom Center, who's helped us to put this together. And the third is the Petrie-Flom Center's administrative director, Shannon Sayre, who's been here helping us in a logistical capacity. So I'm very excited for this event. Don't want to take up more time, so I'll just say welcome, and you'll get a few more welcomes as the day progresses.
Great, and thank you, Glenn. My name's Larry Lessig. I'm a professor in the law school as well, and I also direct the Edmund J. Safra Center for Ethics. And so we're very happy to co-sponsor an event with Petrie-Flom. We've been literally talking about this from the very first week that I got here, and this is the first time we've succeeded, so I hope we're more successful in the future in co-sponsoring these events, because there is a union of interest around this very important issue. The center, the Safra Center, has been focused for the last few years on this question of institutional corruption in lots of fields, not just medicine, but in the context of law and the academy and in government, in all of the contexts in which institutions allow themselves to become misdirected, allow influences to drive them in the wrong way. And the question is, in all of these contexts, what do the institutions do to restore the integrity of that institution? And so I'm very eager to listen and to focus on this particular flavor of the problem of institutional corruption in the context of institutional conflicts. But I also think that this day is a celebration, in a certain respect, of the work of David Korn. David, of course, has been at the center of these, thinking about these issues forever. He accepted a charge at a stage in life when most people would have learned to say no, but he had not learned how to say no, and he came back to Harvard to take on the challenge of bringing Harvard to the place that it ought to be in committing to principles of institutional integrity. He succeeded in organizing deans from across the enormous universe of Harvard University to identify and articulate and finally adopt a set of policies that would address the question in the context of each of those different faculties. And he has been an instrumental part of the life of the Safra Center, attending practically every one of our workshops every single week and continuing to offer the fellows in our center the guidance that his enormous experience has brought him to. So I'm deeply grateful to him. I'm very happy we have a chance to bring together people who I know share the respect that I have for him and his work, to continue in the project that he helped us begin. So welcome to Harvard, welcome to this union of the Petrie-Flom and Safra Centers, and let's begin the conference. Thank you very much.
Good morning. So I'm David Korn, and I want to just say thank you from the bottom of my heart to Glenn Cohen and Larry Lessig, who more than a year ago gave me a green light, really a green light, to organize today's symposium. And I want to thank the staff of both centers who have done an absolutely sensational job in managing some very complicated logistics. I'm grateful for the lineup of distinguished speakers who are with us today to share their insights and perspectives and experiences with the intellectually and operationally challenging issue of institutional financial conflict of interest in the contemporary research university. I regret that due to circumstances beyond their control, neither Francis Collins nor Charles Vest can be with us today. But the NIH is very well represented by its Deputy Director for Extramural Activities, Dr. Sally Rockey. And I am most grateful to Larry Bacow, longtime MIT professor, then president of Tufts University for 12 years, who graciously agreed less than 2 weeks ago to step into the role of rapporteur. Finally, Zeke Emanuel has chosen to make his presentation by videocast. When I joined the Stanford faculty as professor of pathology in 1967, not 1867, 1967, the faculty handbook's treatment of conflict of interest was terse and pointed. And let me read it to you. Most major universities, including Stanford, have taken the position that consulting relationships are on balance overwhelmingly beneficial, and there is no disposition to change that view. At the same time, it would be foolish to ignore the fact that some of the complications arising from this state of affairs can cause damage to the university and to the individual as well. Chief among these complications is that tangled and thorny set of problems embraced by the general title of conflict of interest. Excuse me. The issues subsumed under that heading are principally ethical, and as such, they are not readily codified to rules of behavior. In any event, this university has never found it necessary to spell out the rules or codes of ethics for its faculty and staff. The relationship between the university and its staff assumes that full-time staff owe their primary professional allegiance to the university, and that they will be alert to the possibility that outside obligations, financial interests, or employment can affect the objectivity of their decisions as members of the university community. If those assumptions are valid, as we believe them to be, then no codes or monitoring devices are needed. If they are not valid, then none will suffice. Although academia and academic research, especially in the natural and applied sciences, have changed profoundly since 1967, the descriptors tangled and thorny remain apt to this day. What do we mean by institutional financial conflict of interest, and why are we concerned about it? A report issued in 2001 by the Association of American Universities task force, on which I sat, contains the following definition, which I have shortened a bit. Quote, an institutional financial conflict of interest may occur when the institution or any of its senior management or trustees or department, school, or other subunit has an external relationship or financial interest in a company that itself has a financial interest in a faculty research project. Senior managers or trustees may also have conflicts when they serve on the boards of organizations that have significant commercial transactions with the university. The existence or appearance of such conflicts can lead to actual bias or suspicion about bias in the review or conduct of research at the university. If they are not evaluated or managed, they may result in choices or actions that are incongruent with the missions, obligations, or values of the university. Almost at the same time, a report issued by the Association of American Medical Colleges task force that I convened and which was chaired by Bill Danforth, longtime chancellor and later chairman of the board of Washington University of St. Louis, offered a sort of terser definition. An institution may have a conflict of interest in research whenever the financial interests of the institution or of an institutional official acting within his or her authority on behalf of the institution might affect or reasonably appear to affect institutional processes for the conduct, review, or oversight of research. Most recently, a 2009 report from the Institute of Medicine offers the following definition. Institutional conflicts of interest arise when an institution's own financial interests or those of its senior officials pose risks of undue influence on decisions involving the institution's primary interests. For academic institutions, such risks often involve the conduct of research within the institution that could affect the value of the institution's patents or its equity positions or options. Conflicts may also arise when institutions seek and receive gifts or contracts from companies. The IOM report defines a conflict of interest, and I think this is important, as a set of circumstances that creates a risk that professional judgments or actions regarding a primary interest will be unduly influenced by a secondary interest. This formulation was based on work by Harvard professor Dennis Thompson from the early 1990s, is equally applicable to individuals and institutions. It makes clear that conflicts arise from sets of circumstances and not from moral failings, and it effectively does away with the tortured distinction between potential and actual conflicts of interest. It is or it isn't. I assume that all universities require annual disclosure of outside interests from its senior leadership, which often or typically embraces department chairs and directors of centers and such. And these disclosures are reviewed typically by the general counsel and findings of concern discussed with the audit committee or the governing board. The boards tend to require their own annual disclosures from their members. So in terms of senior officers, imperfect though it may be, there's a process in place. But what about the financial interests of the institutions themselves and the influences they have in shaping the very culture and ethos of an institution? All definitions of conflict of interest are rooted in a hierarchical ordering of interests, or in the case of research universities, of missions, not only distinguishing primary from secondary, but rank ordering within a set of interests that may arguably all be primary. And adding to the challenge, the missions of the contemporary research university are not constant, but tend to accrete over time as public expectations change. And these accreting missions may not themselves always be concordant. What is primary or secondary or tertiary may become ambiguous and inconstant over time. In a small meeting in his office in the 1980s, then Congressman Al Gore, chairman of the House Oversight and Investigations Committee, asserted that, quote, "The public depends on its universities to serve as independent arbiters of knowledge." That same mission is articulated in this slide that's been projected, written by an unknown author, possibly almost a century ago. A different set of missions was mandated by the Morrill Act of 1862, which established the land-grant universities to advance agriculture and the mechanical arts, thus the A&M institutions, and MIT, actually. And ever since, universities have increasingly become recognized as founts of ingenuity and innovation that produce tangible benefits to society. Post-World War II, the creation of Massachusetts Route 128 and the Silicon Valley in California became fabled and captured the imagination of political leaders at all levels of government. Later, the surging biotech and information tech industries, founded by university graduates building on university inventions, intensified the identification of research universities as engines of socioeconomic development. When President Obama signed the Patent Reform Act just 14 months ago, he asserted that research universities are pivotal to job creation and the nation's economic recovery. And last spring, a congressionally mandated report from the National Research Council charged with identifying 10 breakthrough actions vital to our nation's prosperity and security, entitled its third recommendation, quote, "Strengthening partnerships with industry, and asserted strengthen the business role in the research partnership and accelerate time to innovation in order to achieve our national goals. I want to be very clear that I'm not inferring anything inappropriate in these expanding roles and responsibilities, but I am suggesting that meeting expanding public expectations that are not necessarily concordant while maintaining the public's confidence in the authenticity, the integrity, and the trustworthiness of the research university becomes increasingly challenging. It's my expectation that today's symposium will be helpful to all of us committed to surmounting these challenges. Before I sit down, I just want to do a couple of quick housekeeping announcements. The event is being recorded and archived, and if anybody does not wish to have their image or comments included, please let Holly Lynch know. We're going to have a 90-second policy. We're going to have a 90-second request for the length of questions. Please try to get your question out in 90 seconds or less. Otherwise, others won't be able to ask at all. The handouts are at the registration table for internet access. Lunch is on your own, but there will be signs and staff directing them to the cafeteria that's in this building. Bathrooms are to the left and across the hall. And I want you to know that this meeting is being video archived and will be posted on the websites of both the Safra Center and the Petrie Flom Center as soon as possible. Thank you.